The village of Oakhaven nestled on the very edge of the Whisperwood, like a tentative prayer offered to an ancient, slumbering deity. Its cottages, with their thatched roofs and smoke-stained chimneys, huddled together as if for comfort against the looming presence of the forest. A vast, untamed expanse where trees older than memory scraped the sky and shadows held secrets best left undisturbed. Elara, however, found no fear in the Whisperwood, only a profound and abiding solace. It was her truest home, its rustling leaves and hidden pathways more familiar and comforting to her than the company of most villagers. With hair like spun sunset, a fiery cascade that often seemed to capture the last light of dusk, and eyes the clear, thoughtful green of new spring leaves, Elara was a creature of the woods as much as she was a maiden of Oakhaven. Her small, herb-choked cottage stood a little apart from the others, closer to the forest's embrace. Here she lived a life of quiet contemplation, her days measured by the turning of seasons and the rustle of parchment. She was the village's unofficial keeper of lore, the one to whom elders came when their memories faded, and the one young mothers sought for remedies brewed from forest herbs. Her grandmother, a woman whose wisdom had been as deep and mysterious as the Whisperwood itself, had passed down to Elara not only her collection of leather-bound books filled with forgotten tales and celestial charts, but also the understanding of the verdant touch, an innate empathy with the growing things, a sensitivity symbolized by the delicate, perfectly formed leaf-shaped birthmark hidden just above the pulse point on her left wrist. Lately, a subtle disquiet had begun to thread itself through the ancient rhythms of the Whisperwood. The air felt thinner, the songs of the birds more subdued, and even the oldest trees seemed to wear an aura of unease. Elara had noticed it in the way certain healing herbs were harder to find, their vitality diminished. Her books, filled with prophecies of ages past, spoke of such times, of when the balance of the world frayed and the borders between realms grew thin. It was this subtle, encroaching wrongness, a whisper of anxiety from the forest she loved, that drew her deeper than usual into its embrace on this particular afternoon. She sought a rare bloom moon petal said to only flourish where the veil between worlds was thin, hoping its properties might offer some clue, some balm for the forest's subtle ailment. The deeper she ventured, the more the familiar sounds of the woods receded, replaced by a hush so profound it felt as if the trees themselves were listening, waiting. Sunlight, already beginning its descent, struggled to pierce the dense canopy, creating an atmosphere of perpetual twilight. It was in this hushed, expectant air that she found it. Once in the whispering woods where ancient trees touched the sky, Elara, a maiden with hair like spun sunset, stumbled upon a glade veiled in mist. She had never seen this place before, though she thought she knew every secret hollow and winding path of the Whisperwood. It was as if the forest had deliberately concealed it until this very moment. The mist wasn't cold or damp like a normal fog. It shimmered with an inner light, swirling gently as if alive, and carried the faintest scent of ozone and unknown, exotic blossoms, a fragrance that was both alien and achingly familiar. Her heart, usually steady as an old oak, began to thrum with a mixture of trepidation and an irresistible pull. In its heart, where the mist was thickest and the last rays of sunlight refracted into 1,000 tiny rainbows, pulsed a swirl of emerald light, a tear in the fabric of reality. It was a breathtaking, terrifying spectacle, a vibrant, ethereal wound in the world, its edges shimmering as if stitched with liquid starlight and the dust of crushed emeralds. It did not radiate heat but a palpable energy, a low thrum that resonated deep within Elara's chest, vibrating along her bones. Her knowledge, gleaned from years spent poring over arcane texts, screamed of rifts between worlds, of portals to realms beyond mortal ken, things she had always categorized as myth, as allegory. Yet here it was, undeniably real, pulsing with raw, otherworldly power. As she crept closer, her worn leather boots making no sound on the thick carpet of moss that floored the glade. Her breath caught in her throat, a knot of fear and an almost painful spike of scholarly curiosity tightening within her. This was the kind of discovery sages spent lifetimes dreaming of. From the depths of the emerald swirl, a figure began to materialize. It was not a sudden appearance, but a slow, mesmerizing condensation of light and shadow, as if the rift itself were birthing him into her world. He was tall, his silhouette lean and powerful, instantly commanding the space around him. He was cloaked in shadows that seemed to writhe and shift around him like living things, clinging to his form, yet these umbral tendrils could not fully conceal the promise of the man beneath. There was a stark, almost painful elegance to his emergence. As the emerald light of the rift behind him began to subside, settling into a soft, pulsating glow, more details of his appearance sharpened into focus. The silver thread at the cuff of his dark, impeccably tailored sleeve glinted, a subtle hint of refinement amidst the wild, primal energy of his arrival. His face, when he finally looked up, his gaze sweeping the glade with an air of profound weariness before settling directly, unerringly on her, was sharp and undeniably handsome, framed by waves of dark hair that seemed to drink the faint, filtered light, making the striking pallor of his skin even more pronounced. And his eyes, they were the startling, piercing blue of a winter sky, clear and cold, yet holding an ancient knowledge and a profound, almost sorrowful depth that seemed to span eons. An unspoken tension hung heavy in the air, a mixture of Elara's instinctive fear, her utter bewilderment, and an electric, undeniable fascination as their gazes met and held across the otherworldly threshold. He was clearly not of her world, yet the proud set of his jaw, the subtle arch of his brow, the very way he held himself, resonated with a forgotten familiarity, like a character stepping from the pages of her most cherished, time-worn legends. He carried no visible weapon, yet an aura of immense, contained power radiated from him, not aggressive, but palpably present, a silent promise of a world beyond her knowing, a world of potent magic and perhaps unimaginable peril. It was a power that hummed in the air, making her skin tingle, raising gooseflesh on her arms. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, every leaf still, every creature silent, awaiting the next turn of fate, the next word in a story that had just irrevocably, terrifyingly begun. This unexpected, impossible arrival shattered the quiet, predictable rhythm of Elara's solitary life. It was a cataclysm wrapped in shadow and starlight, hinting at adventures and dangers she had only read about in old, leather-bound chronicles of heroes, lost realms, and otherworldly beings. Her hand instinctively went to the small, smooth worry stone she always carried in her pocket, a gift from her grandmother, a supposed charm for clarity and courage. She needed both now in abundance. A single, intricately carved silver ring glinted on his gloved hand, a hand that looked strong, capable. The ring's design was unfamiliar, a complex series of interlocking spirals and cryptic symbols that seemed to shift and change as she looked at them, almost as if they were alive. The air crackled with an energy that both thrilled and unsettled her, a potent, almost intoxicating hum that vibrated deep within her bones, a prelude to a destiny she could not yet comprehend, yet somehow felt had been waiting for her, hidden in the heart of the Whisperwood all her life. Elara stood frozen, rooted to the spot, unsure whether to flee in terror, to speak and risk shattering the fragile, charged silence, or to simply fall to her knees in awe of the impossible being before her. The figure remained still for another long moment, his winter-blue eyes locked on hers, a silent, intense appraisal taking place. He was an enigma, a beautifully dangerous secret brought to life from the heart of a shimmering rift. The shadows that clung to him like a second skin seemed to lessen slightly as he held her gaze, revealing more of the fine, almost noble cut of his features, the proud line of his throat. Who was he, and what did his arrival portend for her quiet woods, for the world she knew? The questions swirled in her mind, as potent and disorienting as the lingering scent of starlight and unknown, ethereal blossoms that now permeated the glade. Her solitary existence had been breached, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that nothing would ever be the same again. The silence stretched, taut and expectant, and Elara found herself holding her breath, waiting for the unknown to finally speak. The silence in the mist-wreathed glade stretched, thrumming with the impossible energy of Kaelen's arrival. Elara, rooted to the spot, could only stare, her mind a whirlwind of disbelief and a strange, resonant understanding that hummed beneath her fear. The man before her, if man was indeed the right term, was an embodiment of the ancient, magical tales she had cherished in secret. A figure stepped directly from the shadowed pages of forgotten lore. He broke the silence first. When Kaelen spoke, his voice was even more captivating than his appearance. It was a melodic tenor, each word shaped with a liquid grace like smoothed river stones or the sigh of wind through ancient, starlit pines. The language was utterly foreign, a complex tapestry of soft vowels and resonant consonants she had never encountered in any of her studies. Yet, as if by some enchantment woven into the very air of the glade, or perhaps an awakening of a dormant faculty within her own mind, she understood him. Not in a literal, word-for-word translation, but in a deeper, intuitive way, the meaning blossoming in her thoughts like a suddenly remembered dream. It was alien, yet it resonated with a haunting familiarity that sent shivers down her spine. "Forgive my unannounced arrival, maiden of the verdant touch," he began, his winter-blue eyes holding hers with a compelling intensity. He inclined his head in a gesture of profound, almost courtly respect, though a desperate urgency tightened the lines around his mouth and shadowed his gaze. "I am Kaelen, and I have journeyed far through pathways that are not meant for mortal feet in desperate search." Elara's breath hitched, maiden of the verdant touch. How could he know that name, that secret description her grandmother had used for those who shared their lineage, their innate connection to the life force of the growing world, symbolized by the leaf-shaped birthmark Elara bore? Her heart, already a frantic drum, began to beat with an erratic, almost painful rhythm. Wariness, a sensible instinct honed by her solitary life, prickled at her, yet beneath it, an undeniable, almost magnetic pull drew her towards this enigmatic stranger. It was as if an invisible thread, spun from starlight and shadows, now connected them across the otherworldly threshold of the Emerald Rift. You know of me," she managed, her voice a mere whisper, lost almost immediately in the profound stillness of the ancient woods. "I know of the hope you represent," Kaelen corrected gently, though his gaze never wavered. The intensity of it made her skin flush and her pulse quicken in a way that was both unsettling and strangely exhilarating. "My realm, Elara," and the way he spoke her name, as if it were a precious, long-sought melody, sent another jolt through her, "stands upon the precipice of a terrible war, a conflict not just of swords and shields, but of light against an encroaching, all-consuming shadow. The very fabric of my world unravels, and its heart withers." He took a hesitant step towards her, the shadows that clung to his cloak seeming to writhe with a life of their own, yet never quite obscuring the noble lines of his form. "I believe," he continued, his voice now laced with a raw, desperate plea that resonated with Elara's own empathetic nature, "that you and the unique gift your lineage carries hold a key to our salvation. Though the full nature of that key, the precise way it must turn, that, I confess, remains veiled even to me. The prophecies are often deliberately obscure until the moment of their unfolding." As he moved, Elara noticed it then, a faint, ethereal glow emanating from beneath the heavy, dark fabric of his cloak. It was a soft, silver-blue light, like captured moonlight or the heart of a distant star, pulsing with a gentle, rhythmic beat. It was not a light of her world, and it only deepened the profound mystery surrounding him, hinting at a sacred power he carried, or perhaps a wound he sought to conceal. Her mind, trained in logic and the careful sifting of ancient texts, struggled to reconcile the impossible reality before her with the quiet, predictable world she had always known. A man from another realm, a world consumed by shadows, her a key to salvation. It was the stuff of the wildest legends, the kind of tales she devoured in her books but never, ever expected to live. Yet despite the ingrained apprehension that urged her to flee, to dismiss this as a waking dream or a trick of the fading light, a profound sense of destiny, a certainty that this encounter was no mere chance, began to take root deep within her soul. It was as if her entire life, her solitary studies, her intuitive connection to the Whisperwood, her very bloodline, had been a quiet preparation for this single, unbelievable moment. Kaelen's voice, though it carried the heavy weight of urgency and the shadow of his world's despair, also held a note of gentle, almost reverent respect when he spoke to her. His words, in their melodic, foreign yet familiar cadence, seemed to weave a subtle magic of their own, bypassing her fear and speaking directly to the core of her being. He spoke of ancient lineages intertwined across the veils of reality, of prophecies that spanned millennia, of a balance that once existed between realms, now broken and in desperate need of mending. These were concepts that resonated deep within Elara's spirit, stirring forgotten longings she had often felt while poring over her grandmother's texts. A yearning for a world where magic was real, where destiny was a tangible force, where a single, ordinary life could touch the extraordinary. His words awakened a sense of purpose she had never known, a feeling that she was meant for more than just tending herbs and dreaming over dusty pages. The way he looked at her, with that heart-wrenching mixture of fervent, almost desperate hope and a profound underlying sorrow, hinted at the immense burden he carried. It was the look of a leader responsible for the fate of his people, a warrior facing impossible odds, a soul teetering on the edge of despair but clinging to one last fragile sliver of light. That unspoken weight, that silent plea in his winter-blue eyes, tugged at Elara's empathetic nature more powerfully than any demand or threat could have. "My world is beautiful, Elara," Kaelen said softly, his voice thick with emotion as if seeing it through her eyes. "Or it was before the blight began to creep from the Shadowlands, poisoning our magic, dimming our light, turning hope to ash. Forgive me for bringing such a burden to your peaceful glade, but the threads of fate, it seems, have led me to your feet." He gestured vaguely to himself, a hint of self-deprecation in his tone. "I am not what I once was. My journey here, it has taken its toll. But the hope of finding you, of finding the one the prophecies named, she who tends the verdant heart, it has sustained me." She who tends the verdant heart. The title sent a jolt through Elara, resonating with her birthmark, her connection to the forest, the very essence of her being. Her apprehension warred with a burgeoning, terrifying excitement. He saw not just a simple village maiden, but someone significant, someone foretold. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering, filled with a desperate hope that was almost a physical force. The path ahead is perilous, and I do not know if I have the right to ask this of you. But if there is even a chance, a whisper of a possibility that you can help us, will you at least hear more of my world's plight? Will you allow me to show you what hangs in the balance? The emerald rift behind him pulsed gently, a silent, waiting gateway to a destiny Elara could scarcely imagine. The forest held its breath, and Elara, the maiden of the Whisperwood, felt the first, tentative unfurling of a future far grander and far more dangerous than any she had ever dared to dream. Elara's gaze remained fixed on Kaelen, her mind struggling to absorb the sheer unlikelihood of his words, the desperate hope that blazed in his winter-blue eyes. A world dying, a shadow blight, prophecies foretelling a daughter of the verdant heart, and him, a being of shadow and starlight, believing she was this foretold savior. It was the fabric of the ancient, dust-laden tales she hoarded, sprung to life in the heart of her familiar Whisperwood. The pragmatic herbalist within her warred with the dreamer, the quiet seeker of forgotten magic. "Show me," she finally whispered, the words barely more than a breath, yet they hung in the charged air of the glade with the weight of a vow. "If my world touches yours, if there is truly a blight that consumes, show me something of this realm you speak of." A flicker of profound relief, so potent it was almost a physical wave, washed over Kaelen's handsome features. The desperate tension that had held him so rigidly seemed to ease, if only for a moment. "Thank you, Elara," he murmured, his melodic voice resonating with a gratitude that tugged at her heart. "Even to listen, to consider, it is more than I dared hope for." He hesitated then, a shadow of reluctance, perhaps even pain, crossing his face. "To show you my world as it truly is, it is not a simple thing. The pathways are treacherous, the energies volatile. But I can offer you glimpses, echoes carried on the threads of magic that bind all realms, however frayed they may become." He raised a gloved hand, the one bearing the intricately carved silver ring. The shadows that clung to his cloak seemed to deepen around him, yet the faint, silver-blue light Elara had noticed earlier beneath its folds pulsed a little brighter, casting an ethereal glow on his face. He closed his eyes, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Picture, if you will," Kaelen began, his voice taking on a richer, more resonant tone, the cadence like an ancient incantation. "Cities spun from living crystal, their spires piercing skies undimmed by smoke or sorrow, catching the light of twin moons in a kaleidoscope of shimmering hues. Imagine forests where the trees sing with the wisdom of ages, their leaves like spun gold and silver, their roots delving into earth rich with untamed magic. Creatures of wondrous form and gentle spirit once roamed these woods, slife-kin with wings of dawn mist. And luminous heart kind, whose antlers branched like nascent constellations." His words, imbued with that subtle magic Elara had sensed earlier, painted images so vivid in her mind that she could almost see them. The soaring crystal towers, the incandescent forests. A gasp escaped her lips. It was a world of breathtaking beauty, a realm born from the purest essence of fantasy. But then his voice grew heavier, laced with an undeniable sorrow. "That was Aeridor, my home as it was meant to be, as it was for millennia." The light beneath his cloak seemed to flicker and the shadows around him deepened. "But now a blight, a creeping despair born of shadow and silence, seeps across our lands. It chokes the life from our singing forests, turning them into graveyards of brittle, blackened wood." It dims the light of our crystal cities, making them feel like hollow shells, their music muted. The wondrous creatures, they sicken or flee or are twisted into things of terror by the blight, corrupting touch. Elara felt a cold dread seep into her bones, mirroring the chill in his voice. The vivid beauty he had painted now seemed all the more tragic in the face of its decay. This Shadow Blight, Kaelen continued, his eyes opening, fixing on hers with a desperate intensity. It is not a natural decay. It is a malevolent force, an ancient hunger, and it spreads, Elara. It threatens to consume all of Aeridor and then perhaps to spill through weakened rifts like this one into other unsuspecting worlds. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. There is a prophecy, an ancient verse passed down through my lineage, the line of guardians who have long stood against such encroaching darkness. It foretells the coming of the Blight, but it also speaks of hope, of a daughter of the verdant heart, born of a world where nature's old magic still slumbers, one whose spirit resonates with the life force of Aeridor itself. This daughter, it is said, will wield the power to restore the balance, to rekindle the fading light. His gaze dropped meaningfully to her hand, to the delicate, leaf-shaped birthmark just visible above her wrist, a mark she had always considered a simple, pretty anomaly. Your connection to this forest, Elara, the very essence of your being, it pulses with a vitality that my blighted world has almost forgotten. The ancient texts say the verdant heart will bear a mark like the first leaf of spring, a symbol of nature's enduring promise. Elara's mind reeled, her birthmark, a prophecy. It was too much, too fantastical. Yet as Kaelen spoke, the truth of it resonated deep within her like a forgotten chord finally struck. The stories of her childhood, the whispered legends her grandmother had shared of a world intertwined with magic, of hidden pathways and ancient guardians, tales she had dismissed as mere folklore, now seemed to hold a profound, almost terrifying significance. Kaelen, sensing her inner turmoil, her disbelief warring with a dawning wonder, reached slowly into the folds of his shadowy cloak. The silver-blue light pulsed again, brighter this time, and he withdrew his hand. Resting on his gloved palm was a small, exquisitely carved wooden bird, no bigger than her thumb. Its lines were so intricate, its form so lifelike, it seemed almost to breathe. "This," he said softly, his voice gentle, "is a whispering, a small messenger spirit of our forests, or what remains of them. They are born of the oldest trees, their hearts a tiny spark of Aeridor's magic." He extended his hand towards her. "Take it." Hesitantly, Elara reached out. As her fingers brushed the smooth, cool wood, a tiny spark, like static electricity but warmer, more vital, jumped from the carving to her skin. She gasped as the wooden bird in her palms suddenly trembled, its carved wings unfolding with a delicate whir. It blinked tiny, bead-like eyes made of amber sap, then, with a flutter of perfectly articulated wooden feathers, it lifted from her hand and hovered in the air before her, chirping a melody so sweet and clear it brought tears to her eyes. It was real, this tangible piece of magic, this impossible, living carving was undeniably real. The last vestiges of Elara's skepticism crumbled, replaced by a profound, overwhelming sense of wonder. The vulnerability in Kaelen's winter-blue eyes as he watched her reaction was heart-wrenching. He was no longer just an enigmatic figure of power, but a desperate man pleading for the life of his world, offering her the only proof he could carry across the void. "Our light is fading, Elara," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "The great crystal spires of Ethelgard, my city, grow dim. Our people, they live in fear, their laughter silenced, their hope dwindling with each passing day. The Shadow Blight devours our memories, our magic, our very souls. He painted a vivid, desperate picture of a realm on the very edge of oblivion, a world of beauty and wonder being slowly suffocated by an encroaching, silent horror. A sense of responsibility, profound and entirely unexpected, began to stir deep within Elara's heart. It was a terrifying weight, yet also an honor. The quiet solitude of her life, once a comfort, now felt like a prelude, a time of unconscious preparation for a purpose she was only just beginning to comprehend. The forest around them, her beloved Whisperwood, seemed to sigh in agreement, its ancient trees witnesses to a destiny about to unfold. The little Whisperwing landed gently on her outstretched finger, its tiny wooden claws surprisingly soft. It looked up at her with its amber eyes, and in their depths she saw not just intricate craftsmanship, but a spark of true, sentient life, a plea from a dying world. The tiny Whisperwing, a marvel of animate wood and captured magic, nuzzled Elara's finger with an almost kittenish affection before, with a final sweet chirp, it launched itself into the air. It circled Kaelen's head once, a silent salute, then darted towards the shimmering emerald rift and vanished within its depths, as if returning to a world that desperately awaited news. Elara watched it go, her heart a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. The wonder of what she had just witnessed, the tangible proof of Kaelen's otherworldly origins and the dire plight of his realm, warred with a profound, instinctual fear of the unknown. Her quiet, predictable life in Oakhaven, her solitary rambles through the familiar Whisperwood, her cherished books filled with the theoretical magic of ages past, all of it suddenly seemed like a fragile dream from which she was now irrevocably awakening. Kaelen's gaze, heavy with unspoken sorrow and a desperate, fragile hope, remained fixed on her. He did not press, did not demand. He simply waited, his entire being an open plea, the fate of his world resting on the decision of a mortal maiden he had only just met. And it was that very vulnerability, that raw, unshielded desperation in the eyes of a being who clearly possessed immense power, that tipped the scales for Elara. Her empathy, her innate connection to the pulse of life that the verdant touch afforded her, responded to his world's silent scream. The stories she had read were no longer just stories, they were a call to action, a path illuminated by a falling star and a prince of shadows. She began, her voice trembling slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of the moment. She took a deep breath, her gaze meeting his, steady and resolute. I will go with you, Kaelen. I will hear more. If there is even the smallest chance that I can help, I will try. A wave of relief so profound washed over Kaelen's features that he seemed to physically sway. The oppressive shadows clinging to his cloak lessened, and the silver-blue light beneath it pulsed with a stronger, more hopeful rhythm. You will, he breathed, his melodic voice thick with an emotion that brought tears to Elara's own eyes. Elara, you do not know what this means to me, to my people. I think, she said softly, a small, brave smile touching her lips, I am beginning to understand. Kaelen straightened, a newfound energy thrumming through him, though the weariness of his long journey and the burden he carried still shadowed his winter-blue eyes. Then we must not delay. The rift, it is stable for now, but such pathways are fickle things, and the energies of my world are in turmoil. The journey will be disorienting. Hold fast to your courage. He turned towards the emerald tear, which still pulsed gently in the heart of the glade. He raised his gloved hand, the one bearing the intricately carved silver ring, and traced a complex symbol in the air before an ancient, gnarled oak that stood sentinel at the rift's edge, a tree Elara had never noticed possessing any unusual markings before. As his fingers moved, the symbol glowed with an ethereal silver light, and the emerald portal before them shimmered anew, its light intensifying, its edges becoming sharper, more defined. It was no longer a chaotic tier, but a deliberate, inviting archway of swirling green and starlight. "The passage is prepared," Kaelen said, his voice resonating with a quiet power. He extended his hand not in a demand but as an offering. "Are you ready, daughter of the verdant heart?" Elara looked at his outstretched hand, then into his earnest, hopeful eyes. This was it, the threshold of adventure, of destiny. With a nod, she placed her hand in his. His gloved fingers closed around hers, his grip surprisingly firm, yet imbued with a gentle warmth that seeped through the leather, a silent reassurance that sent a surprising, comforting tingle up her arm. Together, they stepped towards the shimmering archway. Stepping through felt like plunging into a kaleidoscope of pure, unadulterated sensation. Colors Elara had no names for swirled around her, a symphony of light and shadow. Sounds like the chiming of distant crystal bells and the whisper of cosmic winds filled her ears. She felt a brief, dizzying sense of weightlessness, a feeling of being stretched and reformed, then a gentle pressure and then stillness. They emerged hand in hand into a world that stole Elara's breath away. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of unknown, fragrant blossoms and a subtle, metallic tang that spoke of ancient magic. Above them, not one but two moons graced the twilight sky, one a luminous silver disk, much like her own world's moon, the other a smaller, ethereal orb of soft lavender, casting the landscape in a breathtaking, otherworldly glow. Before them stretched a valley of impossible beauty. Soaring crystal towers, slender and elegant, pierced the sky like frozen geysers, their multifaceted surfaces catching the light of the twin moons and refracting it into 1,000 glittering pathways. Bridges of shimmering, solidified light arced between these towers, silent testament to a magic far beyond anything Elara had ever imagined. The flora around them was equally wondrous. Strange, beautiful plants with leaves like spun glass glowed with a soft inner luminescence, their blossoms unfurling in intricate alien geometries. The very air hummed with a subtle, pervasive magical energy, a vibrant thrum that resonated with the verdant touch within her, making her skin tingle with a strange sense of homecoming. "Welcome, Elara," Kaelen said softly, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow as he surveyed his homeland, "to Aeridor. And yonder lies Ethelgard, the city of my ancestors." He gestured towards the horizon where the tallest of the crystal spires clustered, forming a breathtaking cityscape that seemed to float amidst the twin moonlight. It was a vision from a dream, a testament to a civilization that had mastered magic and beauty in equal measure. Yet, despite the awe-inspiring panorama, Elara sensed an undercurrent of profound unease, a subtle discord in the vibrant hum of the land, a faint chill that even the beauty could not entirely dispel. It was a whisper of the encroaching darkness Kaelen had spoken of, a shadow lurking just beyond the edges of this wondrous light. As they began to walk along a pathway paved with smooth, faintly glowing stones, they passed figures, the people of Aeridor. They were tall and graceful, with a delicate, almost ethereal beauty, their attire woven from fabrics that shimmered like captured starlight. Some bore faint, luminous markings on their skin similar to Kaelen, and their eyes, in varying shades of sapphire, amethyst, and emerald, held an ancient wisdom. Yet as they passed, Elara saw the worry etched on their faces, the fear that dimmed the light in their beautiful eyes. The vibrant colors of their clothing, the very luminescence of the city in the distance, seemed somehow muted, as if a fine layer of dust or shadow had fallen over everything. The Shadow Blight was not just a distant threat, its touch was already felt here, in the heart of Kaelen's kingdom. A group of children, their laughter like wind chimes, stopped their play to stare at Elara with wide, curious eyes. An elderly couple paused, their gazes lingering on Kaelen with a mixture of reverence and desperate hope, then shifting to Elara with an unspoken question. The weight of their expectations, their silent pleas, was immense. Elara felt a tremor of fear, of inadequacy. Who was she to bear such hope? She was just a simple herbalist, a reader of books. Kaelen, sensing her unease, tightened his grip on her hand. His touch, strong and surprisingly warm through the glove, sent a jolt of reassurance through her. It was a silent promise, a reminder that she was not alone in this alien and wondrous, yet clearly troubled place. His presence beside her, the steady strength of his hand in hers, became an anchor in the overwhelming flood of new sensations, new responsibilities. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with dangers she could scarcely imagine, but as she looked up at Kaelen's determined profile, silhouetted against the twin moons of his dying world, a new kind of courage began to bloom in her heart, a courage born not just of destiny, but of a dawning, shared purpose. The path of glowing moonstones led them towards the heart of Ethelgard, a city that seemed sculpted from starlight and dreams. Crystal spires, impossibly slender and graceful, soared into the lavender and silver-kissed sky, their peaks crowned with soft, pulsating lights that Elara now recognized as a hallmark of Aeridor's magic. Bridges of pure, solidified light, shimmering like frozen aurora, arced between the towers, and delicate, melodious chimes like the music of distant stars drifted on the cool, fragrant air. It was a place of breathtaking, ethereal beauty, a testament to a civilization that had once walked hand in hand with magic. Yet, as they drew closer, the subtle discord Elara had sensed in the valley intensified. The light of the crystal towers, though still magnificent, seemed to possess a fragile, almost brittle quality. The intricate, luminous patterns that adorned their surfaces flickered erratically in places, and some of the connecting light bridges were dimmed, their glow weak and hesitant. The Shadow Blight, Kaelen's silent, insidious enemy, was not just a distant threat. Its tendrils were already coiling around the very heart of his kingdom. Kaelen's hand remained clasped firmly in hers, a warm, steady anchor in this overwhelming new reality. His presence, once a source of fear and apprehension, now felt like a shield. As they entered the city proper, traversing plazas paved with mosaics of glowing gems and passing beneath archways carved from what looked like solidified moonlight, the inhabitants of Ethelgard began to appear. They were as Kaelen was, tall, graceful, with an almost unearthly beauty. Their attire was woven from fabrics that seemed to shift and shimmer with every movement, their hair like spun moonlight or polished obsidian, often adorned with delicate living flowers that glowed with a soft inner light. But it was their eyes that captured Elara's attention, eyes of sapphire, emerald, and amethyst, reflecting the twin moons above, yet holding within them a deep, pervasive sorrow and a stark, gnawing worry. As Elara walked beside Kaelen, a ripple of whispers followed them. Heads turned, conversations ceased, replaced by a hushed, expectant silence. Some of the Ethel guardians eyed her with open, wary suspicion, their gazes lingering on her simple, travel-stained earthly attire, her sunset hair a stark contrast to their own ethereal hues. She was an outsider, an unknown variable in their desperate equation. Others, however, looked at her with a dawning, almost painful glimmer of desperate hope, their eyes searching hers as if seeking a miracle. The weight of their collective gaze, their silent pleas and unspoken fears, was a heavy burden on Elara's shoulders. "They feel the Blight's touch keenly now," Kaelen murmured, his voice low, meant only for her ears, though his grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly. "It corrupts not only our lands but our spirits. It breeds fear, suspicion, despair. Our magical defenses, once impenetrable, have weakened. The ancient wards falter. Forgive their wariness, Elara. Hope has become a dangerous commodity in Ethelgard." He led her through winding, crystalline streets, past fountains whose waters flowed with a dimmed, sorrowful light, and gardens where the once vibrant, luminescent flora drooped, their colors muted. The vibrant hum of magic that should have filled the city felt thin, like a fading melody. Finally, they reached a colossal structure at the city's heart, a tower that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, its peak lost in the starlit sky. This, Kaelen explained, was the sanctum of whispering lore, Ethelgard's most ancient library, repository of their history, their magic, and their prophecies. The interior was even more breathtaking than the city outside. Vast circular chambers soared upwards, their walls lined not with books but with an infinite array of glowing scrolls, crystalline tablets etched with shimmering runes, and floating orbs of light that pulsed with captured memories and ancient knowledge. The air hummed with a quiet, concentrated power, a symphony of wisdom accumulated over millennia. Kaelen led her to a secluded alcove where a series of magnificent tapestries hung, their threads woven from moonlight and shadow, depicting scenes from Aeridor's long history. One, larger and more prominent than the others, showcased a radiant figure, a woman with hair like fire, wielding a staff of living, blossoming wood, standing defiant against a tide of encroaching darkness. "The prophecy of the verdant heart," Kaelen said, his voice filled with reverence as he gestured towards the tapestry. "It has been passed down through generations, a beacon of hope in our darkest hours. It speaks of one from another world, a daughter of Earth whose spirit resonates with the primal life force, who will come when Aeridor's need is greatest to stand against the shadow and rekindle our fading light." Elara stared at the tapestry, her heart pounding. The woman depicted, there was something in her stance, in the fierce determination in her woven eyes that felt strangely familiar. Tentatively, Elara reached out, her fingers brushing against an ancient, leather-bound scroll that lay open on a pedestal beneath the tapestry, its pages filled with intricate, glowing script. The moment her skin made contact with the parchment, a torrent of vivid images, sounds, and emotions flooded her mind. She gasped, stumbling back, Kaelen's hand instantly at her elbow, steadying her. She saw the woman from the tapestry, her fiery hair blazing, her green eyes alight with power, wielding a staff that pulsed with the raw, untamed life of 1,000 forests. She saw her battling shadowy, formless figures, creatures of nightmare and despair in a landscape of dying light and encroaching darkness. She heard the clash of magic, the cries of the afflicted, the defiant song of life struggling against oblivion. And she felt it, the immense courage, the unwavering hope, the profound connection to the living world that fueled the verdant heart's power. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Elara breathless, her mind reeling, her own leaf-shaped birthmark tingling with a strange, resonant warmth. The connection to the prophecy to the woman in the vision felt undeniably, terrifyingly real. Yet a core of doubt of inadequacy still lingered within her. Could she truly be this figure of legend? Could she, Elara of Oakhaven, wield such power, bear such a responsibility? Kaelen's gaze was soft, filled with an unwavering belief that was both a comfort and an immense pressure. "The scrolls respond to you, Elara," he said quietly. "The lineage of the verdant heart recognizes its own." His faith in her, so absolute, so unshakable, became a steady anchor in the sea of new and overwhelming information that threatened to drown her. "There are others who must be convinced," Kaelen said then, a graver note entering his voice. "My council, they have governed Ethelgard through these dark times. Some will welcome the hope you represent. Others," he hesitated, "others will be skeptical, fearful of placing our world's fate in the hands of an outsider, a mortal." He led her from the alcove into a grand, circular chamber higher in the tower, where a group of solemn-faced Ethelgardians, clad in robes of deep blue and silver, awaited them around a polished crystal table. These were Kaelen's council members, their expressions a mixture of anxiety, stern appraisal, and a desperate, searching hope. Kaelen introduced Elara, his voice clear and firm, though Elara could sense the subtle tension beneath his composed demeanor. "This is Elara of the Verdant Woods," he announced. "She whom the prophecies have foretold, she who carries the hope of Aeridor." A murmur ran through the council. An elderly woman with eyes like ancient stars and hair like spun silver smiled faintly, a welcoming warmth in her gaze. But a tall, stern-faced man with features as sharp as ice and an aura of cold, contained power fixed Elara with a look of open skepticism. "An outsider," the stern man said, his voice like the crack of breaking ice. "A mortal, she is to be our salvation, Kaelen. The prophecies are ancient, their meanings often lost to time. How can we be certain she is the one and not merely a harbinger of false hope or worse?" The challenge hung in the air, heavy and cold. Elara felt a flush of fear but also a spark of defiance. Kaelen's hand, still resting lightly on her elbow, gave a subtle, reassuring squeeze, a silent message of support that resonated through her more powerfully than any words. The path ahead, she knew, would not be easy. The skepticism of the Ethelgard Council, particularly from the stern, ice-eyed Lord Thuron, lingered in the crystalline air long after Kaelen had guided Elara from the high chamber. It was a heavy cloak of doubt, and Elara felt its chill despite Kaelen's reassuring presence beside her. He had defended her potential with a quiet, unshakable conviction, but the burden of proof, she knew, rested squarely on her mortal shoulders. How could she, a simple herbalist and lore-keeper from a world where magic was mere fairy tale, possibly embody the salvation of an entire realm of ethereal, powerful beings? "Do not let their fears dim your spirit, Elara," Kaelen said softly as they walked through the silent, glowing corridors of the Sanctum of Whispering Lore once more. The twin moons cast long, shifting shadows through the crystal archways. They are a people clinging to fading hope, wary of false dawns. Their doubt is born of despair, not malice. "But what if they are right, Kaelen?" Elara whispered, her voice tight with her own burgeoning anxieties. "What if I am not this daughter of the verdant heart? What if I fail your world?" Kaelen stopped, turning to face her in the soft, ambient light of the library. He gently took her hands, his gloved fingers surprisingly warm and strong around hers. His winter blue eyes, usually so filled with sorrow or fierce determination, now held a profound, unwavering belief that seemed to penetrate her very soul. The prophecies do not lie, Elara. The ancient scrolls, the tapestry, the way the magic of this place itself seems to hum in your presence. Even the whisperwing. It recognized you. He gave her hands a gentle squeeze. You carry a spark that Aeridor has not seen in millennia. We merely need to help you learn how to fan it into a flame. His faith was a balm to her frayed nerves, a steady anchor in the overwhelming sea of new realities and immense expectations. And so, under Kaelen's patient tutelage, Elara began to delve deeper into the lore of his world, into the very heart of its magic and its sorrow. They spent countless hours in the hushed, luminous alcoves of the sanctum, surrounded by ancient scrolls that unrolled to reveal shimmering, self-writing script and crystalline tablets that, when touched, sang with the voices and memories of ages past. Kaelen was an unexpectedly gifted teacher. He explained the intricate cosmology of Aeridor, the flow of its magical energies, the delicate balance between the twin moons, Lyra, the silver moon of dreams and intuition, and Aeron, the lavender moon of arcane power and ancient law, and how their light had once nurtured the land. He spoke of the Shadow Blight with a grim clarity, describing it not as a mere pestilence, but as an insidious, sentient negation, a creeping void that fed on hope, leached magic, and twisted life into grotesque parodies of itself. It had originated, he explained, from a wound in their world, a scar left by an ancient war against a forgotten god of chaos, a weakness that had festered for centuries before finally erupting into the current crisis. The verdant heart, Kaelen elaborated, his finger tracing a glowing diagram on a floating orb of light that depicted the flow of life energy through Aeridor, is not merely a title, Elara. It is a living conduit, a direct connection to the primal life force of our world, the very wellspring of its magic. In times of balance, this connection is maintained by many, by the land itself. But when that balance is threatened, when the wellspring dwindles as it does now under the blight, the prophecy states that an individual with a uniquely resonant spirit, the daughter of the verdant heart, can become a focal point, a catalyst to reignite and restore that flow. He looked at her, his gaze intense. Your verdant touch, your innate empathy with the growing things of your world, your leaf-shaped birthmark, these are all echoes of that deep resonance, signs recognized by our seers long ago. As Elara absorbed this overwhelming knowledge, a part of her still reeled in disbelief, yet another, deeper part, the part that had always felt the silent song of the whisperwood, the part that had instinctively understood Kaelen's melodic alien tongue, recognized a profound, undeniable truth. The stories of her childhood, the ones she had cherished and protected, were not just tales, they were prophecies waiting for their hour. Kaelen, in turn, began to reveal more of himself, of his own past. He spoke of his lineage, a long line of guardians sworn to protect Aeridor, each bearing the weight of an ancient vow. He described the immense responsibility he carried, especially now, as the blight threatened to consume everything his ancestors had fought to preserve. There was a deep sorrow in him, a loneliness born of centuries of duty and the fading hope of his people, but also an unyielding strength, a fierce determination that Elara found herself increasingly admiring. Their shared journey into the depths of Aeridor's lore, the sheer weight of the task before them, began to forge a deeper, more intimate bond between them. They spent hours side by side, poring over ancient texts, their shoulders occasionally brushing as they leaned over a glowing scroll, sending a surprising jolt of awareness through Elara. Sometimes their hands would touch as they reached for the same artifact, a spark igniting in the shared space, a silent acknowledgement of the growing current between them. In these quiet moments, amidst the dust of ages and the scent of old magic, Elara found herself seeing beyond Kaelen, the enigmatic prince, the desperate envoy from another world. She saw Kaelen the man, burdened but brave, learned but humble, his heart far warmer than his winter-blue eyes sometimes suggested. One evening, as the twin moons cast their ethereal glow through the high crystal windows of the sanctum, Kaelen suggested Elara try to connect with the ambient magic of Aeridor more directly. The verdant heart must not only understand magic, Elara, but also learn to wield it, however gently at first. Your own world's magic is wilder, more instinctual. Ours is more structured, tied to the flow of celestial energies and the resonance of living things. Try a simple warding, a shield of intent. He guided her through the visualization, his melodic voice a soothing balm to her nerves. Elara closed her eyes, focusing on the memory of the Whisperwood, on the vibrant life force she had always felt there, and on the new, thrumming energy of Aeridor that now resonated within her. She imagined a shield of soft, green light forming around her, a barrier woven from an ancient forest resilience. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a suddenness that startled her, a surge of raw, untamed energy erupted from her outstretched hands. It was not the gentle green shield she had envisioned, but a dazzling torrent of emerald and gold light, shot through with sparks of sunset orange that blasted outwards, striking a nearby training dummy, a relic from a more martial age of guardians, and sending it skittering across the polished crystal floor, smoking slightly. Elara gasped, her eyes flying open in shock and dismay. Kaelen, who had stepped back just in time, stared at the smoldering dummy, then at Elara, his expression one of utter, stunned surprise that quickly morphed into something far more intense. "By the twin moons," he breathed, his voice filled with an awe that sent shivers down Elara's spine. He slowly walked towards her, his gaze fixed on her hands, then lifting to her face. The intensity in his winter-blue eyes as he witnessed this unexpected, potent display of raw, untamed power spoke volumes. It was a look of profound realization, of dawning, almost fearful hope, and something else, something that made Elara's heart beat a wild, exhilarating rhythm against her ribs. The verdant heart, it seemed, possessed a fire he had not anticipated. The last echoes of Elara's unintentional magical outburst faded into the hallowed silence of the sanctum of whispering lore, leaving behind the faint, unsettling scent of ozone and scorched crystal from the training dummy. Elara stared at her hands, then at the smoldering mark on the far wall, her heart hammering with a mixture of terror and a wild, unfamiliar exhilaration. Such power, it had felt like a storm, a sunburst, erupting from the deepest core of her being. Kaelen moved towards her slowly, his winter-blue eyes, usually so carefully guarded, now wide with an undisguised awe that made her breath catch. He knelt before the scorch mark, his gloved fingers gently tracing its edges, then looked back at Elara, a profound understanding dawning on his face. "That was not a simple warding, Elara," he said, his melodic voice hushed, almost reverent. "That was the raw essence of the verdant heart, the untamed fire of life itself, unchanneled, yes, and startlingly potent. The prophecies, they spoke of such a power, but I never truly comprehended." He shook his head, a slow smile filled with wonder and a renewed, almost fierce hope beginning to touch his lips. "You are truly she who tends the verdant heart, there is no doubt left." His certainty, his absolute belief in her after witnessing such an uncontrolled display, was a more potent balm to Elara's spirit than any magical draught. Fear still lingered, the fear of such unknown power thrumming within her. But beneath it, a new sense of empowerment began to unfurl, delicate yet tenacious as a forest seedling pushing through hard earth. In the days that followed, as the news of the Shadow Blight's relentless advance reached Ethelgard with increasing urgency, tales of entire forests turning to ash overnight, of once vibrant rivers running black with corruption, of despair tightening its icy grip on the outlying settlements, Elara began to truly embrace her potential. The looming darkness served not to crush her spirit, but to galvanize it. The fate of Aeridor she now understood with a clarity that was both terrifying and exhilarating, rested, in part, upon her. Guided by Kaelen's patient and insightful tutelage, she learned. He taught her not the rigid incantations or complex rituals of Aeridor's mages, but how to listen to the subtle hum of magic that flowed within her, how to connect with the life force of the natural world around her, the steady strength of the ancient crystal spires, the resilient glow of the lumina flora, the whisper of the wind through the city's ethereal arches. Her training sessions were not held in dusty chambers, but in secluded, starlit gardens within Ethelgard, or sometimes they would venture to the very edge of the city, where the encroaching tendrils of the blight could be seen, a creeping miasma that served as a stark reminder of what they fought against. These sessions became a delicate, intricate dance of power and trust. Kaelen would show her how to draw upon the ambient magic, how to feel its flow, how to shape it with her intent. Elara, in turn, often surprised him with her intuitive grasp, her verdant touch, allowing her to connect with energies he, for all his power, perceived differently. Her magic was not his was the storm and the shadow, the ancient power of his lineage. Hers was the vibrant, tenacious pulse of life, the emerald and gold and sunset orange she had unleashed, a power that seemed to sing of growth and renewal. Their connection deepened with each passing day, an unspoken understanding weaving itself between them, stronger than any spoken vow. A shared glance across a moonlit garden as Elara managed to coax a wilted lumina bloom back to fragile life held more meaning than 1,000 words. A lingering touch as Kaelen steadied her after a particularly draining exercise sent shivers of awareness through them both. A silent acknowledgement of the growing current that flowed not just from magic, but from their hearts. There were moments of vulnerability, too, Elara confessing her fears of inadequacy, Kaelen sharing a fragment of his centuries-long sorrow, the loneliness of his vigil. These small instances, these shared confidences under the light of Aeridor's twin moons, wove a tapestry of unspoken affection, a bond forged in shared purpose and a dawning, tender regard. They both knew that their training, their growing understanding of Elara's abilities, was leading to one inevitable point, a perilous journey to the very source of the Shadow Blight, a place deep within the corrupted heartlands of Aeridor from which the darkness emanated. It would be a journey that would test their courage, their newly awakened powers, and the burgeoning, unspoken feelings that now arced between them like the delicate light bridges of Ethelgard. One evening, as they stood on a high balcony overlooking the city, the twin moons casting their silver and lavender glow upon the crystal spires, Kaelen turned to Elara. The usual shadows that clung to him seemed softer tonight, his winter blue eyes holding a warmth that made her heart ache with a sweet, unfamiliar pang. The encroaching blight felt like a distant hum of dread, momentarily pushed back by the quiet intensity of the moment between them. "Elara," he began, his voice a soft melody. "The journey ahead, it will be more dangerous than anything you have ever faced. More dangerous, perhaps, than anything I have ever faced." He reached into a pouch at his belt and drew out a small object. It was a pendant crafted from a single tear-shaped gem that shimmered with all the vibrant greens and golds of a sunlit forest. It seemed to pulse with a gentle internal light, and Elara felt an immediate, comforting resonance with it, as if it were a piece of her beloved Whisperwood given form. It hung from a delicate chain of woven silver, the same silver that threaded Kaelen's own cuffs. "This is a Sylvandel gem," Kaelen explained, his gaze never leaving hers. "Found only in the deepest, most untouched parts of Aeridor's ancient forests, where the magic of life runs purest. It is said to hold the echo of the world's first song, a symbol of hope, of enduring life." He gently took her hand, his gloved fingers warm against her skin, and placed the pendant in her palm. "Wear it, Elara. May it be a shield for your spirit, a light in the encroaching darkness, and a promise. A promise that you are not alone." Her fingers closed around the smooth, warm gem. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the sight of his handsome, earnest face. It was more than a gift. It was a symbol of his belief in her, of his care, of the profound connection that had grown between them amidst the shadows of his dying world. Their eyes met, and in that moment, under the watchful gaze of the twin moons, amidst the looming darkness of the Shadow Blight, a spark of true, undeniable love ignited. It was a beacon, fierce and bright, a defiant flame against the encroaching shadows. It bound their destinies together in a way neither could have foreseen that fateful afternoon in the quiet solitude of Elara's earthly forest. The path ahead was perilous, the fate of Aeridor uncertain, but as Kaelen's hand covered hers over the glowing gem, Elara knew with every fiber of her being that she would not face it alone. Their journey had truly begun.